Okay, so what this particular webinar is all about is basically, I guess one could call the softer side of UniPhi. Our attempt at creating software that facilitates team development and agile working. So basically the background for that was some research we did 14 years ago in an emerging field of using the complex adaptive sciences in the natural world and applying that to management theory. We weren't the ones doing that. There was a bunch of people around the world doing that, Terry Cook Davies and Kay Remington and the like, and publishing works around that stuff, and I found it very interesting. And basically we're going to have a look at what that means in a simplistic sense first, and then how that relates particularly in the construction industry. You know, instead of looking at the normal stuff that we've done on these webinars around cost control and contract administration, we're looking more about how do we integrate people and get the best performance out of a project team. So conceptually first for points 1 and 2, and then we'll look into the specifics of how UniPhi is doing that, and hopefully with some interest we'll be looking at basically that through our new interface that's going to be released to everyone and has started to be released for a week now. I'm just going to mute everyone else who's joined us. Hopefully they can all hear us. If you can't, chat to me and I'll see what I can do. I'll then unmute at the end for questions and answers at the end of the session. This shouldn't be a long presentation, 20 minutes or so would cover us. So back in the consulting days before UniPhi was its own business, this sort of stuff was fairly common for us to present on, but you know, this is really what underpins everything that we've done in the design of UniPhi, this idea of complex adaptive teams. And so what that actually means is it's pinching from research that's been done in the natural world around chaos theory and complex adaptive systems, and the properties that they display, like birds flocking or that type of thing. There is a hierarchy. Small changes in initial conditions can have large changes in outcomes. There's emergence as opposed to predetermined outcomes. So, and these are the time periods for this obviously scale quite considerably, but what we're talking about here is that, you know, when you're trying to do something complex or you're trying to foster complexity to create better outcomes, the ideas and where you're actually going to end up may not be known at the beginning. And I think that in a lot of projects that are considered complex, that is definitely the case. Complex adaptive systems show properties of self-organization, so people or systems, in instance, natural systems, are able to organize themselves without any overarching sort of governance, if you like. And the overall behavior of the system is the result of a large number of decisions made daily. When you look at that and basically think about how that might relate to projects, it doesn't set up well with some of the traditional project management body of knowledge tools that are prevalent, for example, the Gantt chart. And this is why a Gantt chart pretty much doesn't exist in UniPhi. Our idea is that you can't predetermine the process you're going to follow. Now, in a complex project, there will be elements there that are fixed and that are known and that have a well-defined process, and you know, things like Lean and Six Sigma approaches to those can be put in place and they can operate as efficiently as possible. But outside of that, within the overall project, there'll be other streams of work, if you like, that are less well-known, less well-defined, and hence require more iteration, they require more conversation, and they can't be tracked in a Gantt chart. And so there's some of the things that we've taken on board 14 years ago in the early development of this application. Doesn't necessarily have to be just purely construction projects, but our application is predominantly used in that space, and hence that's where the conversation is being applied today. I think everyone on the call is in that area. So in construction, there's a term that sort of suits this complex adaptive system approach, and it's called integrated project delivery. Obviously, construction is an interesting one because it has multiple organizations involved on these complex projects to a greater degree than other projects like potentially IT or communications or product development and things like that. So That adds a complication contractually. So they've come up with this term integrated project delivery, and triple Ps and those type of contractual arrangements can, early contractor involvement can facilitate this type of thing. But even so, even in a traditional design and construct contract, this sort of evolution towards a complex adaptive team rather than a hierarchical work breakdown structure, work allocated process is definitely going to be something that creates optimal results. The more common thing in construction at the moment around systems is BIM, and while that has amazing outcomes when effectively produced, in our opinion, you can't effectively produce a building information model that does everything that they purport BIM can do without an integrated project delivery, without lots of conversation happening on a daily basis between the various team players and therefore the various organisations. And so we see those two elements, complex adaptive systems, integrated project delivery, BIM, where the construction industry is trying to go, as being something that we can help with, and that our system sets up well with probably faster track benefits than even some of the traditional BIM outputs that they're trying to produce at the moment. So how do we do that? If I just quickly jump back to my agenda here, how we're looking to foster complex adaptive teams and actually implement integrated project delivery is through 4 key points of our software design. The first is that UniPhi relies, when it's most optimally used, on a distributed data capture model. That means that everyone in the project team is involved in using the tool in some way. And I'll take you through how that is facilitated in a moment. We also need to be able to capture it in multiple ways. There may be on-site information that you need to capture through mobile devices. You may have emails coming in, so there's information outside of UniPhi that still needs to be brought into the system, so we need to integrate that. And there's obviously the traditional web interface for capturing information. We then need to be able to thread those conversations into logical groups so that people can follow what's happening and therefore participate. So the main thing here is that the emergence happens because people find out about things that they wouldn't have normally known. There is an enormous amount of what we call tacit knowledge in construction, and it's unlocking that tacit knowledge and sharing it with more people that unlocks a hell of a lot of information, a greater chance of issue resolution and risk mitigation at a faster speed. And then we've also got this concept in UniPhi of an infinite loop where you can basically circle through a piece of information to various parts of the system and cycle back again within one loop. So they're the 4 fundamental design principles of the application, and here's how they work in our new interface. So the first one is distributed data capture. And the easiest way to sort of start talking about that is just to look at the 3 license levels that are predominant within UniPhi. So I'm in a Chrome web browser here. I'm looking at the portfolio summary of a fictitious organization, and I'm logged in as the system administrator in this instance, but program manager gets a very similar view. So lots of tabs, lots of parts of the system to monitor, a bit like Mr. Burns style, if you like, as from a helicopter viewpoint, and get an understanding about what's going on in the system. I can click on the communications tab and see every single piece of comment, document, issue, risk, thread that's going on in my application and my organization on a daily basis and see what the level of activity is. Now, that's only useful if people are logging activity. So we need to see lots of entries on a particular day. And then we use things like filtering and search to narrow that down. Obviously, you can select within a project as well to narrow that down. So we need to engage with other people. The sort of most common user level is team member, and that's this interface here. A lot less modules to get your head around. It also is these documents and issues are the only 2 modules available on our mobile apps. So they're the most, what we're trying to do there is we call it on-site, and we're trying to capture as much information on-site as we can. So we can get a feel for what's happening without necessarily going to site. And when we have PCG meetings or whatever else, we're not spending time on getting an understanding of progress. We're discussing issues. We're discussing what's emerged so that we can progress and get to our outcome in a more efficient manner. So this is supposed to be our goal here within this is to have a very simple, clean interface for people to use, and for that person to be able to get into their shorter list of projects, get into the issues system, and be able to add comments, conversations, problems, what have you, as often as they can. And like I said, that can come through here or their mobile phone or through Outlook. And then there's another interface that's similar to the system admin, but when we look at the filtering of it, it only displays my stuff. And so this is a project manager license. They're only looking at their portfolio. It's an abridged version of the database, but it focuses the attention on the things they need to be working on, and keeps them focused on those elements. Again, quite a broad look though, and you can click the communications tab there, and you'll get all the conversations on the portfolio projects that you're actually working on, not the entire organization's portfolio. So there's three simple different views of the application that encourage, hopefully, a broader uptake of the application. You can engage with a contractor or with a client or even a subcontractor to get them to use the team member view. The challenge there is that they might only be working on your project 10% of the time, so it has to be simple. It has to be something they can easily get their head around and give something back to them, so that they're, instead of emailing you an RFI that they then have to maintain in the Excel spreadsheet register, everyone can come in here. Everyone knows the current RFI register. They're not having to maintain it themselves, along with the contractor, along with the PM rep, along with the QS, along with the client, along with the, someone else. Everyone's just going into this list and looking at their RFI registers and filtering and conversing and collaborating around those. As this list would be potentially quite short for the contractor, as you can see here, there's only 3 projects. It shouldn't be something that's complicated for them to use, and they're actually inputting into it as they see fit. So the main emphasis around this is, if you do distribute data capture, you can discover things. And a common thing I'll do on our client sites when I go and see various people about it is I'll try and see if I can find something that they may not know about in their projects that they're running. And that's really the key of this communications tab. It enables you to have a look either at a specific project, new search bit in there, which is going to be brilliant, drill in and focus on that particular thing, and then just start clicking around. And my favorite web browser function is control click, because then or middle mouse if you use a mouse, which I don't do, then you get to basically have multiple tabs coming up over here that you can get a quick feel for what's going on around this particular project or across the entire portfolio. And when you do come into that particular group, you're getting this conversation thread, documents that you can read up on. These have documents that you can download, links to other things, a whole heap of information that you can find out who's working on what and what are they doing around this particular soil contamination issue. So that's what I'll try and do. I'll try and go in there and say, hey, did you know about X? And they'll go, how did you know about that? And I'll show them how I knew about it, and they can then encourage them to use that part of the system to find out what's going on. Within the documents application, there's similar things like that with template filtering and with search, and those sorts of exploration type functions we're looking to enhance on all the time. As a demonstration of that, in this, actually I'll go into this Westfield Hurstville project. What we'll do is, one use case on our system at the moment is design review. And what happens is that without using UniPhi, they will basically get an email sent to them with a link to a document repository that has the drawings, and then they will populate a spreadsheet with their comments. Now, it's one spreadsheet that has to go back to the contractor or the designer in their review, and it might need to be reviewed by 20 people. So that spreadsheet has to be bounced around. There's now 20 versions of it, potentially 100 versions of it by the time it actually comes back to say a document controller to send back again. And I don't know how long that process would take. When you consider that I'm logged in here as a team member, I'm doing my review, I've downloaded the drawings, I've reviewed them, I'm either adding a new issue or I'm commenting on the design issue that's been been raised, and I'm just basically coming in here and I'm clicking my comment, I'm writing my opinion, and any issues that I may have, I can attach files to that and basically get as much information as I can get back across to the group. The entire group will be notified about that, and we've got that made. And so, as an example, I'm in Edge here. I go across as a different user in Chrome. I'll click into this particular issue, and I'm instantly updated as to what Tim Mander has said about this particular design review. You can see below that there's an email that's been logged into the system as well, and so that could have come in from someone externally. And we're not sharing an Excel file with multiple versions that ends up being confused and difficult to track. We've got due dates around this. We can allocate Tim at that role if we wanted to, and basically make sure that the review is done as optimized as possible. So in essence, you could have 20 people comment on this particular issue at the same time and have 20 comments in there within 5 minutes. That's where we meet the large number of communications happening on a daily basis element of a complex adaptive system. The second point in the agenda was capturing through multiple devices. The Play Store and App Store have UniPhi on-site. This new release has the ability to utilize all modules of the application through the web application. Hang on a sec. Shrink the application scale. So you'll see in a moment that the menu system at the top here is dropped, and you'll be navigating through the hamburger that's predominantly there to support when you're working on a phone. So you know, at that resolution now, you've basically got nice, big, chunky buttons, big text that you can expand. And when you're looking on your phone, you can add your own comment, add your own action within the application itself, or you could still use the on-site apps that are available and free to download once you've got a license through the web application. Equally, you would have seen that I mentioned before the issue comment in this particular one was logged from an email. So if you're using Outlook, you can drop into your email, have those emails come in and either save them as an issue or as a document. And again, that will then thread the conversation against the issue. So if I click that particular link, it'll pop up with a login. This is picked up on my deployment. You can have multiple deployments though. If you log out, you've got the different deployments that you can log into. And you're basically going to save a particular email against an issue. Well, I said save issue, either creating a new one or appending to existing to get that conversation thread happening. And you can categorize it within the system and then basically hit save and move to the next one and file it off, or save and drill if you want to add actions and other things to that particular thing. So, you know, 3 different ways of capturing information into the UniPhi database so that we get that distributed data capture, so that we get a subcontractor, a contractor, a cost manager, a project management super, a client, all entering information into the system so that discovery can be made and people can understand where things are at on a project. The next key, once you get that volume of data into the system, is being able to find it effectively. And so this is where within the registers and the multiple places that you can actually see something comes into it. So you'll discover accidentally by browsing through different parts of the application. So we have an issue here, concept design discussion. We've drilled in on that one already. I can see it in the issues list. It isn't categorized. I'll just go back to all projects. Again, the matrix structure of UniPhi is another one around this. If you look at folders, SharePoint library folders or Windows Explorer folders, typically you can't see across folders, therefore you can't see across projects. I'm in all projects here. I've got projects listed down, and I can look across and filter on all of the RFIs I've issued to clients recently, and then click on those and get that conversation thread as well as the tasks that are happening to manage it. So that's all there for me to discover what's going on. So this filtering layer, the search that you can do, are crucial to the success of being able to discover what you need. However, equally, you can view this information in a few other places. There was a sec. Oh, it was Tim Mander, wasn't it? So if I go to Tim Mander, search for Tim. There he is. If I click on his name, because we're Optimum, it found quite a few Tims. I need to be more specific in the search, but we got there in the end. I then scroll down, and what we'll have, oh, this is my knowledge of the new interface actually, it's on the details sub-nav, is all the correspondence to Tim. And there's that concept design discussion there as well. So it may be that I know I'd received something from Tim, but I couldn't find out where it was. I couldn't see it in the issue log. I couldn't see it in the communications tab. I can click on Tim's name, and again, I've got the same type of filters, the same type of categorization that I can filter on to find the information I need, and then click on it there, and I've gotten back to the same issue that we were in a minute ago. So far we've found it via the Issues tab, which is logical. We found it via the Resources tab. It doesn't need to even be Tim. It could be searching for his organisation. So sometimes you can get to the person just by clicking on the link to them. Back in there, this person belongs to Optimum Construction and he's in the Sydney side of that. Both of these would have the same type of correspondence, but instead it'll be at a higher level. So we've got Dennis, we've got UniPhi user, Jane Smith, we've got much more correspondence at the organisation level. But again, I see the same issue and I'm back into it again. I can also find it from the Communications tab, and there it is, top of field there. So same categorization exists, except what this is a merged list of all of the risks, issues, and documents that have been created. So documents are created from templates, so you'll get templates listed here with issues, with risks, and what have you. So again, the RFI studies list will be there, and that all comes in for you to click on and find out what's going on. And then finally, there's one last place within the summary, and this is a new UniPhi 13 thing as well. Within a portfolio summary, there's now a tasks view, and what that gives you is all of the open actions that relate to contracts, documents, issues, milestones, and risks. And so again, this helps with the emergence, because if I click on a specific project, a team member can know about deliverables that they need to get done. They'll know about milestones that are coming up. These ones are really big trouble because they're seriously overdue. And they can find out more information about them by clicking on the particular issue and getting the information displayed within there. And then there's one more. I might be, I'll just go back to all projects for a moment. RFI subbies. Within a particular issue, and I might spot a related document. If I click on that particular document, it gives me the uploaded drawings. These are the spreadsheets, but they could be drawings or PDFs or what have you. But they also give me a link, as long as your template's been designed that way, back to the issue that you were originally looking at. So although it's opened it in a new tab and you could just click there to go back to it, if you close that down, or if you opened it into this document originally and you didn't know about the issue, again, you can click back to that issue and you've got all the conversation that's happening around that particular document. And then there's the document again, so you can go back into that document, and that's an example of the infinite loop that I was talking about, where you can actually do that forever and you end up just toggling between the two parts of the system to get that information. So nearly every single module, I've got to stop calling them tabs, along this part of the application integrates. In the contract system, you can get all the contract documentation displayed once you're in a contract. And again, that could link to an issue that relates to the RFI that led to a variation order. So it becomes an infinite loop as well. You've got in the details section all of that documentation. There's the payment certificate. Any RFIs or EOTs will be displayed there dynamically as they come through. The original purchase order that was belonging to this particular contract. So what that is all about is about emergence. It's about being able to discover and understand what a project is doing, where it's at, and where it's trying to get to, without necessarily ever meeting a person. In disparate project teams where you've got people from different companies on different systems using different processes, our goal is to get them all collaborating around this common platform, sharing information and being able to be kept up to speed so that there's when issues arise, they can be addressed potentially without even any correspondence at all from a telephone call or a meeting sense. A drop ball gets picked up, someone fixes it, and it just gets closed out and you move on. That's the goal, that's the philosophy, that's the vision of the application, and that's how we think we can support what has been an emerging research field for management theory for about 20 years now around fostering complex adaptive systems or complex adaptive teams to support complex projects. I'll stop the recording now and just take questions and unmute everyone. So 1 second.